Hello everyone. Welcome to my channel Bold and Beautiful today.
Nick's concerning news for Brooke is that Steffi's secret assistant deceives Luna. Nick Marone is going to eavesdrop. Nick will be shocked to discover a marriage proposal underway while spying on Taylor Hayes and Ridge Forrester at Il Giardino. Nick will inform Brooke Logan of Taylor's proposal to Ridge after he witnesses and hears it. Brooke will undoubtedly be caught off guard and wonder what Ridge's response was. Taylor will receive a proposal response from Ridge, so we'll see if he accepts or rejects it. In any case, when Ridge confesses to Brooke later, it will be time to tell the complete truth. Will Ridge acknowledge that, given Taylor's history of broken heart syndrome, he fears shattering her heart? Will Ridge admit that he would still want to be with Brooke if circumstances were different? In any event, Brooke will get some advice from Katie Logan as she attempts to manage her tumultuous romantic life. As long as Ridge remains with Taylor, Nick will continue to believe that Brooke belongs with him rather than Ridge, and Nick's dedication will become more alluring. Sheila Sharp will discuss Spencer's and their propensity for treachery with Deacon Sharp. Sheila might recall how, during that FBI sting, Bill Spencer acted as though he was in love with her. Will Spencer will now go on his own covert mission, which John Finnegan and Steffi Forrester will highly value. Will act as though his relationship with Electra Forrester is gone and approach Luna Nozawa as Finn and Steffi will be depending on him to do so. May's relationship with Electra may suffer as a result, though, as she may find his kisses with Luna repulsive. Even though all of this is a part of a takedown plan, Electra won't like it, according to BNB spoilers. Luna will soon experience the anguish and rage of betrayal. Will's ploy may put Luna in a position where she must flee as she will ultimately be on the run. The eavesdropper was shocked by Nick's bold wedding decision. When it comes to Ridge Forrester and the future she desires, Taylor Hayes will take matters into her own hands. Taylor will feel compelled to take extreme measures in order to fulfill her word to Ridge that she will never allow Brooke Logan to stand in their way again. Ridge hasn't provided concrete evidence of his commitment to Taylor, despite his constant assurances to the contrary. An engagement ring, in Taylor's opinion, would make a big difference and demonstrate to Brooke that Ridge is committed to the long term. In an ideal scenario, Taylor would undoubtedly prefer that Ridge make the proposal. But if Taylor waited for Ridge to pop the question, she might have to wait forever. Taylor will also have no qualms about organizing her proposal and acquiring a ring for herself because she is a sophisticated woman who knows how to take the initiative. It turns out that Taylor will choose to pop the question in Il Giardino, so she will soon call Ridge in for a formal speech. Taylor will push Ridge into an unexpected wedding in the hopes of getting married to him again. Coincidentally, Nick Marone will be at Deacon Sharp's restaurant when this marriage proposal takes place. Nick will have the opportunity to listen in on the conversation and witness Taylor's glitz. With regard to the idea of destiny, Nick has been pursuing Brooke and attempting to alter her viewpoint. Nick will therefore be very curious to see how Ridge reacts to Taylor's proposal. Nick will promptly inform Brooke of any new information he finds out. Fans of BNB can anticipate that Ridge will be caught off guard and find it difficult to respond till that time. It won't be easy for Ridge to deal with this predicament, but he can't leave Taylor hanging forever. Taylor will continue to hold out hope that she will marry Ridge again and lead a happy life. Unfortunately, Taylor's romance is doomed regardless of the response Ridge offers her in the upcoming episodes. Brooke Logan stood silently in the Forrester mansion, her heart cracking like shattered glass beneath the weight of betrayal. The chandelier above flickered softly, its light failing to illuminate the darkness in her soul. She had fought, God, how she had fought, for Ridge, through decades of tumultuous passion, heartbreak, affairs, marriages, and promises that were as fleeting as Los Angeles sunsets. But this time it was different. Ridge had made his choice. He had agreed to marry Taylor. Again. And this time, it wasn't a misunderstanding or a fleeting lapse in judgment. It was real. Legal. Binding. Public. Final. The echo of his words still lingered in her ears like a haunting melody. Taylor deserves this. She's the mother of my children. I owe it to her. Brooke's fingers trembled as she reached for her suitcase, hastily packed with barely thought-through outfits, shoes, and a few keepsakes that now felt like relics of a war she'd finally lost. She couldn't stay in LA. Not with Ridge and Taylor parading around town in their picture-perfect family fantasy. Not with the whispers, the glances, the relentless media spin. She needed distance, clarity, peace. And oddly enough, she found herself calling the one man who had once offered her exactly that, Nick Marone. Nick hadn't changed much. Still rugged, still raw, still honest in a way that Ridge never had been. When she told him what happened, her voice steady, her eyes hollow, he simply nodded. "Come with me," he said, like it was the most natural thing in the world. "Let's get out of here. Start fresh. No Ridge. No Taylor. No Forresters." And just like that, Brooke agreed. There were no grand declarations, no dramatic kisses under the California moonlight. Just two souls, scarred and battered, clinging to the hope that somewhere outside the glitz and venom of Beverly Hills, they could breathe again. As they drove up the Pacific Coast Highway, LA shrinking in the rearview mirror, Brooke watched the ocean waves crash against the rocks, wild, uncontained, furious. Much like her heart. But with every mile that passed, the weight on her chest lightened, and Nick's steady presence beside her reminded her that she wasn't alone. Not anymore. And maybe, just maybe, that was enough to start over. In the ever-shifting world of Forrester Creations and the tangled web of relationships that surround its prominent players, nothing remains hidden for long. Secrets unravel like silk threads, loyalties bend under the weight of emotion, and love, always complicated, turns friend into rival, and passion into power. Now, amidst a swirl of heartbreak, scheming, and clandestine plots, Steffy Forrester's latest covert plan begins to unfold, sending shockwaves through everyone involved. At the center of it all stands Luna Nozawa, blindsided, vulnerable, and unknowingly ensnared in a game she never agreed to play. It all begins with a seemingly innocent gesture, as Will Spencer, now grown and deeply entangled in his family's long-standing vendettas, agrees to help Steffy and John Finnegan execute a calculated ruse. Their goal, to expose Luna as a liability, someone whose loyalties might pose a threat to their fragile balance of power in the Forrester dynasty. They needed proof, a setup, and someone charming enough to lure Luna into a false sense of trust. Enter Will, who claims he's ended things with Electra Forrester, his fiery and unpredictable girlfriend. The truth, however, is murkier. Electra is only partly aware of the deception, and though she agrees to play along for the sake of family unity, her disgust deepens each time she sees Will and Luna's orchestrated kisses. Behind those staged romantic moments is a simmering resentment, threatening to boil over as Electra wonders whether Will's faux infatuation might evolve into something more authentic. Meanwhile, Luna, navigating her own emotional maze, begins to feel herself pulled toward Will, charmed by his apparent vulnerability, his attentiveness, and the way he listens without judgment. What she doesn't know is that each conversation, each subtle flirtation, is part of a meticulous plan to gather information, to trip her up, and ultimately to make her fall, not for Will, but into a trap. The deeper Luna is drawn into the illusion, the more vulnerable she becomes, until, inevitably, cracks begin to show. Something doesn't feel right. Whispers behind closed doors, knowing glances between Steffy and Finn, and the cold aloofness from Electra, all begin to eat away at Luna's sense of belonging. As her intuition sharpens, she starts to question everything, most of all, herself. When she finally stumbles upon a series of damning messages exchanged between Will and Steffy, the betrayal hits her like a thunderclap. Heartbroken and humiliated, Luna flees, unsure of where she's going but certain she cannot stay. As Luna vanishes from the Forrester orbit, Steffy tries to manage the fallout. Her plan, though effective in exposing Luna's vulnerability, may have gone too far. Finn begins to doubt whether this level of manipulation was justified, especially as Luna's absence begins to cause emotional ripple effects among the team at Forrester Creations. The guilt gnaws at him, leading to tense exchanges between husband and wife. Steffy, always the strategist, insists it had to be done, but in her quieter moments, even she wonders whether they crossed a line. Meanwhile, Electra, once content to be the silent partner in Will's mission, explodes. The image of Luna's face as she learned the truth haunts her, and for the first time, she questions not just Will's motives, but her own complicity in a cruel deception. As she distances herself from Will, their relationship enters a dangerous limbo, teetering between resentment and regret. Across town, another storm brews. Nick Marone, always a wild card in the tangled history of Brooke Logan's love life, finds himself in the right place at the wrong time, or perhaps the wrong place at the right time. At Il Giardino, while sipping espresso and indulging in some idle people watching, he becomes an accidental voyeur to a private and monumental moment. Taylor Hayes, elegant and poised, is down on one knee, asking Ridge Forrester to marry her. It's a scene so unexpected that Nick almost drops his coffee. As he watches Ridge's stunned expression, he knows he's just witnessed a pivotal moment, one that could shatter Brooke all over again. Torn between staying silent and the need to protect Brooke, Nick makes his decision. He hurries to find her, his heart heavy with dread and responsibility. Brooke, ever radiant and perennially caught in the emotional tug-of-war between destiny and disappointment, receives Nick's news with wide eyes and a tightening heart. Her breath catches as he recounts the scene, Taylor, hopeful and brave, Ridge standing in stunned silence. The implications ripple through Brooke's mind like an aftershock. Did he say yes? Did he finally close the door on their decades of passion and promise? Or is he still straddling the impossible line between two women he claims to love? That night, Brooke can hardly sleep, her thoughts running in circles, her heart torn between fury and heartbreak. When Ridge finally shows up at her doorstep, his face full of apologies and complications, the air thickens with unspoken truths. Ridge confesses, he didn't say yes. Not yet. Not because he doesn't care for Taylor, he does, deeply, but because his heart is still fractured, and a part of it remains tethered to Brooke. The admission stuns Brooke. She demands clarity, does he love her or not? Ridge's answer is murky, clouded with nostalgia, loyalty, and fear. He admits he's afraid of breaking Taylor again, of pushing her over the edge, especially after her previous diagnosis of broken heart syndrome. But he also admits something more devastating, that if circumstances were different, if life weren't so tangled and full of obligations, he would still choose Brooke. The words hang in the air like smoke, beautiful and tragic. Brooke, caught between feeling honored and feeling second best, turns to her sister Katie for guidance. Katie, ever the voice of reason, reminds Brooke of her strength and worth. She warns her not to fall into the same patterns again, to demand more than half-truths and maybes. Meanwhile, Nick waits in the wings, offering quiet support and a not-so-subtle reminder that Brooke has other options. He doesn't hide his feelings. He still loves her. He always has. And the longer Ridge waffles, the more compelling Nick's stability becomes. Brooke, torn between history and hope, begins to reassess what she truly wants, not just in a partner, but in a future. The triangle morphs once again, shifting the balance of power between Ridge, Brooke, and Nick in unexpected ways. Back in the shadows, another player watches the chessboard with keen interest. Sheila Carter, never one to stay idle for long, shares a quiet, venom-laced conversation with Deacon Sharp. She speaks of betrayal, of Spencer's and their fake promises, her voice laced with venom as she recalls Bill's faux romance during the FBI sting. Sheila's rage simmers, her mind calculating, always one step ahead. She warns Deacon that the Spencers may think they've won, but she's not finished, not yet. As she speaks, her eyes flicker with something dangerous, something unspoken. Deacon listens, concerned, but not entirely unsympathetic. He knows what Sheila is capable of, but also what she's been through. Their shared history binds them, even as it threatens to unravel. As these threads weave through one another, Luna's heartbreak, Brooke's torment, Ridge's indecision, Steffi's scheming, Nick's longing, Electra's fury, and Sheila's looming vengeance, the stage is set for yet another explosion in a world already full of emotional landmines. Nothing stays buried. Every secret finds light. And in the glamorous, cutthroat world of Los Angeles' elite, love isn't just an emotion, it's leverage, it's currency, and it's often the most dangerous weapon of all. Il Giardino buzzed softly in the early evening, golden light bouncing off wine glasses and the quiet clink of silverware echoing under the murmur of soft conversation. Taylor Hayes sat at a table dressed in elegant simplicity, her long chestnut hair softly curled, her eyes gleaming with anticipation, but also laced with nerves. Her hands hovered near a small velvet box tucked into her purse, a box that symbolized far more than the ring it contained. Tonight wasn't just a date, nor a discussion, nor a routine meeting between two people who'd danced around love for decades. This was the night Taylor decided to rewrite her story, no longer willing to play second to Brooke Logan in Ridge Forrester's romantic saga. The past had proven again and again that Ridge's heart was a battlefield, with Brooke occupying territory she rarely relinquished. But Taylor had made a vow to herself, not just to Ridge. She would not let Brooke's legacy of interruptions, complications, and declarations of destiny rob her of happiness anymore. No more waiting, no more wondering. Taylor was a modern woman, a world-renowned psychiatrist who counseled patients on seizing agency in their lives. Tonight, she would take her own advice. Ridge had whispered commitments, shared stolen glances, made heartfelt promises, yet no ring. No timeline. No true demonstration of permanence. Taylor realized that Ridge was a man divided, emotionally sincere, yes, but often paralyzed by the weight of his history with Brooke. So she would cut through that paralysis with boldness. If he wouldn't propose, then she would. Unbeknownst to Taylor, fate, or perhaps poetic irony, had brought an unexpected spectator into her moment of courage. Nick Marone, former flame of both Logan's sisters and a man who danced his own steps across the ballroom of complicated love, was seated just a few tables away. Initially there for a quick bite and some banter with Deacon Sharp, the restaurateur and longtime friend, Nick's ears perked as he spotted Taylor entering, then Ridge arriving moments later. His instincts kicked in, the kind that had served him in business, romance, and occasional espionage. When Taylor stood, her voice low yet firm, when she reached into her purse with a trembling hand, when Ridge's eyes widened in surprise and a small velvet box appeared between them, Nick leaned just slightly to the left, his fork suspended midair. What he saw wasn't just an awkward moment between exes or a spontaneous romantic gesture. This was a power play, a declaration, a disruption to the status quo he knew had governed Ridge's world for far too long. Taylor Hayes, asking Ridge Forrester to marry her, and doing it in public. And Nick, of all people, had a front row seat. Taylor's voice rang with conviction, though Ridge could hear the vulnerability beneath her words. She spoke of shared memories, of raising children together, of years spent loving him from both near and afar. She acknowledged their false starts, their pauses, the mistakes, but reminded him that through all of it, her love had remained constant. And then she opened the box. A simple but elegant ring sparkled under the restaurant lights. It wasn't gaudy or ostentatious, it was symbolic, intentional. Ridge looked between the ring and Taylor's face, the air thick with history and hesitation. His mouth opened, then closed. His brow furrowed. Time seemed to stretch infinitely as patrons nearby lowered their voices, sensing drama in the air. And Nick, ever the opportunist, barely blinked, afraid to miss a second. The eavesdropping was more than passive listening, it was fuel. Nick had recently set his sights on Brooke again, emboldened by what he saw as Ridge's indecisiveness and the growing cracks in the destiny narrative she clung to. He'd been trying to make Brooke see that destiny was often just a habit dressed up in poetry, that maybe Ridge wasn't the dream she believed him to be. And now here was living proof, Ridge, caught off guard, speechless, being proposed to by the woman who'd always stood patiently in the background. A woman who'd finally said, enough. Nick knew this was the kind of moment that could shift Brooke's worldview. It wasn't about Ridge betraying her. It was about Taylor rising, unapologetic, direct, and modern in a way Brooke rarely allowed herself to be. Nick's mind raced with the possibilities. He had to tell Brooke, but how much, and when? Back at the table, Ridge struggled. Taylor's speech had touched him. Her courage moved him. But he wasn't ready, not like this, not now. And maybe, if he were honest with himself, not ever in the way Taylor hoped. But how could he say no? Saying no meant breaking something fragile, something Taylor had dared to build after years of being treated as second best. Saying yes, though, meant altering the course of his life based on momentum, not certainty. Taylor saw the flicker of doubt in his eyes, but she pressed on, not with desperation, but with dignity. She told him she wasn't asking for an answer tonight, but that she needed to know if he could ever truly choose her, without Brooke in the picture, without ghosts in the background. She slid the ring across the table and said, "You decide when. But don't take too long. I've waited enough for this." As Ridge stared at the box, the walls of Il Giardino seemed to close in around him. Every table, every breath of air felt like pressure. Taylor stood and walked away, leaving Ridge to his thoughts and his silence. And Nick, still watching, finally let out a low whistle, running a hand through his hair. He understood now that this wasn't just about a proposal. This was a fracture in the long-standing triangle, a tectonic shift. Whether Ridge accepted or not, the old rhythms were breaking. The next morning, Nick arrived at Brooke's estate with a knowing smile and a bottle of wine. She opened the door, surprised to see him so early, but invited him in with polite curiosity. He wasted no time before sharing the story, every detail, from the way Taylor's voice cracked with emotion to the stunned look on Ridge's face. Brooke's expression changed from bemused to bewildered to betrayed in rapid succession. Not because she still believed Ridge was fully hers, but because she hadn't expected Taylor to make the first move. Brooke had always assumed that Ridge would come back to her, eventually, as he always had. This, Taylor proposing, in public, was a challenge she hadn't seen coming. But more than that, it was a statement: Brooke didn't own Ridge's future, not by default. Nick used the moment to his advantage, telling Brooke that maybe this was a sign, a reason to reevaluate everything. Maybe Taylor wasn't the rival, just the woman brave enough to demand clarity. Maybe Ridge wasn't the prize, but the man they both deserved better from. Brooke didn't answer right away. She was caught in a web of emotions: jealousy, confusion, fear, and maybe, just maybe, liberation. Nick left her with the thought that destiny, real destiny, doesn't require constant justification. It just is, or it isn't. Back in Ridge's world, things weren't simpler. He stared at the ring on his desk for hours, replaying Taylor's words in his mind. He thought about Brooke's unwavering belief in fate, in them. And he thought about Taylor's strength, her vulnerability, her refusal to be a footnote anymore. No matter which way he turned, someone would be hurt. But he also realized, for the first time, that maybe the real issue wasn't choosing between two women. Maybe it was finally choosing himself, his values, his truth, without leaning on old stories or inherited expectations. The ripple effect of Taylor's proposal was far-reaching. Steffi and Thomas had mixed reactions: pride in their mother, concern about Ridge's indecisiveness. Brooke became more withdrawn, watching old family videos late into the night, trying to understand where she lost control. And Taylor, she felt oddly free. Whether Ridge said yes or no, she had acted. She had spoken. She had refused to be silent in her own love story. As the days passed, the Forrester estate buzzed with rumors. Eric quietly admired Taylor's boldness, while Quinn, from afar, mused that perhaps women proposing should become the norm. Hope wondered aloud what this meant for the future of their blended family. And through it all, Nick remained observant, a catalyst, nudging the narrative along, not just for drama, but maybe, deep down, for healing. And Ridge? He finally called Taylor, asking to meet again, not at Il Giardino, but at the beach, where their story had once felt simplest. There, he returned the ring, not as a rejection, but with a promise to earn it, properly, when and if he was ready. Taylor smiled sadly. It wasn't the answer she wanted. But it was honest. And for now, that was enough.